name is Jackie DiCarlo. I'm the Executive Director of Manna Food Center, and I'm really delighted that we are able to host this event with Nonprofit Montgomery with just 3 weeks away for the primary. This is a great opportunity to hear from the candidates about their positions related to the social safety net and issues involving not only some of our most vulnerable neighbors, but the whole community at large. I want to take a moment to recognize my colleague, the Director of Operations, Kevin Trossel, who made this evening possible. Hope and Mindy and their team at Nonprofit Montgomery, the great folks from Montgomery Community Media, and of course the candidates. But the most important people here are you, because you are participating in our democracy. How many of you have been to Manna Food Center before? All right. Well, welcome back. Thanks to those of you who came for the first or second time with donations. By the way, we will put those to good use. If you've never been to Manna, you may not know what all of this is about, but let me just help you imagine that at 6 o'clock in the morning at those two bays, about 6 drivers get ready, and we head out to supermarkets all over the county to rescue food that is edible and fresh and ready to be consumed by hungry folks. We keep it out of the landfills and we get it into the pantries of different organizations and different homes. Maybe if you've ever visited, you have been helping us sort some of the food that, just like you brought in tonight, we get from food drives, from Girl Scouts and synagogues and other community groups that come together and make sure that we have enough to put in our boxes, which over here we sort. And we put together for about 175 people every day. Families get 3 to 5 meals that are filled with that produce that we rescue in the morning, as well as shelf-stable foods, cans and pastas and rice, to help them make sure that they can feed themselves and their families. When we do that every day and all year long, we reach about 36,000 individuals here in Montgomery County. We are one of many different groups helping, and we don't even meet half the need of families who don't know always where their next meal is coming from. So we're really delighted that you are with us tonight to help the candidates tell us how they're going to create a community where that kind of food insecurity and hunger is not happening. Why the growth rate in the number of our school children who are receiving free and reduced meals continues to climb in one of the best counties in the United States of America. So we want to see what these folks are going to tell us about being a prosperous community for all of us. Thank you so much for being here, and I want to turn it over to my colleague Louisa, who's going to tell you a little bit about how the night's going to go.
Good evening. What a great backdrop, right, for this kind of event tonight. Thank you, Jackie and Manna Food Center, for so graciously hosting this event tonight. As Jackie said, my name is Luisa Montero Diaz, and I'm the director of the Maryland Multicultural Youth Center, which is part of the Latin American Youth Center. And along with Scott Birdsong, I co-chair the Nonprofit Montgomery. In that capacity, in that latter capacity, let me again welcome you tonight to Nonprofit Montgomery's very first candidates forum for county executive. Nonprofit Montgomery is an affiliate of the Nonprofit Roundtable that focuses on improving the quality of life for all Montgomery County residents and serves as a network, information resource, and also advocate for Montgomery County's nonprofit sector and the issues that are important to us as a sector. Together, nonprofits in this county serve more than 500,000 county residents. We employ more than 43,000 people, and we engage literally tens of thousands of volunteers and donors. So I want to also thank tonight Montgomery Community Media for handling the sound system and filming the forum. And I also want to thank a planning committee that worked tirelessly to put this together, but really under the leadership of a tireless advocate and of the nonprofit sector, Hope Gleicher. So let's give Hope a round of applause, please. You might think that this was put together by a team of people, but it was really Hope and Mindy Chong also, and Sharon Friedman helping out. So it's really a small group of people that did this. However, the planning committee did provide input and guidance, and I just want to recognize those people those members, organizations that were members of the planning committee. Interfaith Works, Manna Food Center, Mental Health Association of Montgomery County, Maryland Multicultural Youth Center, Montgomery Moving Forward, Montgomery College, Montgomery County Coalition for the Homeless, Montgomery Housing Partnership. So let's thank all of these members for helping out tonight. And now I want you to join me in both thanking and welcoming Lou Peck, who will be our moderator for this evening. He's the contributing editor of Bethesda Magazine, and I know that this evening is going to be a really important forum for the issues that are important to the voters, for us to make a choice, and also the focus issues that are important to the nonprofit sector. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you and welcome everybody. And I'd like to welcome both the four candidates and thank all of you for being here this evening. I've moderated two previous debates among the three Democratic contenders, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the experience, although I'm not sure they share the sentiment. This evening's discussion, which I should mention, by the way, is being live tweeted on the hashtag of RT MoCo Forum, has been organized in a modified debate format. While details of the procedures to be followed were forwarded to the candidates when they agreed to join us today, I want to briefly review these rules of engagement, if you will, for the benefit of both the candidates and the audience. The position of the candidates on stage was determined by the drawing of straws a little while ago, and that will determine the order in which the candidates deliver their opening and closing statement, with the candidate seated nearest to me, Mr. Andrews, going first. Each candidate has been accorded 2 minutes for an opening statement and 1.5 minutes for a closing statement immediately prior to the adjournment of this session. Following the opening statements, I will begin posing questions to the candidates, with Mr. Andrews closest to me receiving the first question, Mr. Leggett the second one, Mr. Shalak the third, Mr. Duncan the fourth, and there will be a total of 5 questions posed during this sequence of questioning. When a question is posed to a given candidate, he will have 2 minutes to answer. The other 3 candidates will then be given 90 seconds each to respond, and the candidate to whom the question was originally posed will be given 60 seconds for a closing. I would call the attention of the candidates to the timekeepers section over there. The timekeepers will be holding up cards alerting the candidates when they have 30 seconds remaining and no time remaining in their respective answers. Also, to maximize the amount of time we have for questions and answers from the candidates, I would ask the members of the audience hold their applause until the end of this session. Once the 5 questions that I mentioned, which have been written with the goal of covering a broad array of issues of interest to this audience, have been asked, we will open the session to audience questions. I should note there is limited time for this, so I would ask that anyone seeking to ask a question adhere to the following guidelines. First, this is the one microphone available to you, so once the formal part of the program is over and it's opened up to audience questions, please, if you want to ask a question, line up here. Secondly, please be succinct as possible in asking your question to maximize the time available for others to ask questions. And also, please keep in mind that this part of the program is a time to ask questions, not to make speeches. Finally, please indicate whether your question is directed to all of the candidates or to a particular candidate when you are asking a question from the audience. If a question is directed to all candidates, each of the four will have up to 1.5 minutes to respond. If it is directed to a particular candidate, he will have 1.5 minutes to respond, and then I will ask the other 3 candidates if any or all of them would also like to address that particular topic. Once the formal part of the session is over, and if their schedules permit, some or all of the candidates will be available for one-on-one discussion for those of you who don't have the opportunity to ask a question this evening. With that, Mr. Andrews, your opening statement.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. And I'm Phil Andrews. I think this may be the first candidate forum that's ever been held in a food bank, and that's terrific, and it does say something about the needs in Montgomery County. It's been my honor to serve on the county council now for 16 years, and I've worked on many different issues over that time. I wrote the county's living wage law back in 2002 to make sure that our own county policies aren't used in a way that keeps people in poverty. Wrote the law that made our restaurants smoke-free in 2003 to protect restaurant workers and patrons. work to make sure that our police disability retirement system works the way it's supposed to. It was abused and needed major reform. That took several years to do. And most recently, I wrote the law that expands employment opportunities for people with disabilities, so our county can be a model employer in that way and ask the private sector to do more as well. Our county is a wonderful place to live. We all live here because it's a great place, but we do face major challenges. If we want to continue to be the progressive county that we have been for a long time, and to have the funds available for the progressive services that we all want, to make sure that we have the ability to meet the needs of the many vulnerable people in our community, whether they are poor, whether they are infirm, whether they are sick, and whether they are abused, or whether they are disadvantaged in other ways. We need to make sure that we are fiscally responsible. And I bring that to the table. I have a record of both fiscal responsibility and progressive reform. If we're going to keep our competitive edge in this county, we need to make sure that we are competitive with our other jurisdictions, that we do better in Annapolis in getting our tax dollars back, that we keep taxes reasonable, and that we keep our spending reasonable so people can afford to live here. I look forward to your questions, and I thank you for coming out tonight. This is truly democracy in action.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Doug Duncan. It's great to be with you. I want to thank Lou for moderating, thank Manna Food and Nonprofit Montgomery for hosting and arranging all this. It's great to be with you, and it's great to see so many friends again. I was county executive in years past. We did a lot together. We rebuilt Silver Spring, we built Strathmore, we rebuilt Glen Echo Park. We did a lot of different things that made this county a better place. And one of the things I'm most proud of is I really viewed my role as county executive as a builder of communities. I saw myself as not as the county executive of Montgomery County, but as the mayor of Bethesda, the mayor of Silver Spring, the mayor of Wheaton, the mayor of Germantown, the mayor of Brookville. Sort of each community is different. And the way we sort of tied it all together was with you all, was with the nonprofits in our community. And you all do tremendous work every day of the year helping this community be a real community instead of a county. You help people care about each other. So I was very proud to have put together operating grants for an awful lot of you. I was very proud to have put together grants to help a lot of you get started. I was very proud to put together, I thought, a creative grant program to help you fund some capital needs, whether it was for computers or a van or copying machines or furniture or whatever, as a way to help you get your needs met so that you could do the work of serving the public better. And as Phil said, this is a wonderful community. We live in a great county. We've got tremendous challenges in front of us. My top priorities are education, growing more jobs in the county, and making sure the county government works for the people of this community, that we can get county services done effectively and efficiently to help you do your work better. My vision for the county is that we should be a center of excellence in everything that we do, whether it's our schools, our economy, our environment. Whatever we do, we should strive for excellence, and certainly our nonprofits and our relationship with nonprofits, we should strive for excellence in that as well. Thank you very much. I look forward to your questions.
Well, I'm Jim Shalik. I'm the Republican candidate, and I don't get invited everywhere, so thank you for having me, and I really mean that. And I want to thank you all for what you do. And this is also a learning experience for me, learning about what you do, and I want to learn from you so that I can know what your issues are. I've been here 25 years. I came here 25 years ago to work in the Reagan Justice Department. I'm from New York City. I came here after being an assistant district attorney in the Bronx. I was chief of the Bronx DA's Homicide Bureau. I was assistant attorney general of New York State, and then I came down here to work in the Justice Department. Because of my background, my single priority, and my second priority, and my third priority is public safety. What we see on the news every night drove me to seek my party's nomination. I prosecuted David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, for the 3 murders he committed in the Bronx. I have seen what evil does up close to families and to the whole city of New York. I never, ever want to see a CNN helicopter over any of our schools. I don't want to see reporters chasing grieving parents across Wooten High School's parking lot when they wonder if their child is alive or not. I'm proposing a uniformed police presence at every school. I want to make sure we have the assets and the communication assets, so God forbid there's an attack, we're ready. I think our county is too complacent about public safety. I want to get the 10,000 students we have in trailers out of trailers. They're boxes, no bathrooms, they're vulnerable to attack. So my priority is public safety. All of these other issues are very important, but without public safety, it all falls apart. But thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ike Leggett. I know what you do, and you do it very well. And you've done it under some very difficult, troubling circumstances and conditions. You've done it in the most recent years through the worst recession that we've had since the Great Depression. But without you, we could not be the model county that we are. Without your expertise, your motivation, your passion, your creativity, your leadership, much of what we've achieved together would not be possible. And we've achieved some great things under difficult circumstances. Now, underline that. Great things under difficult circumstances. Those were things that did not come easy. They came because you had a county executive who said that I place the value of what we do for the most vulnerable in our community at the top of our list, with schools and public safety. I've said in a heat of difficulties and challenges that I would not accept even an arbitrator's decision which is by law in this county, that I would much rather go to court to fight an arbitrator's decision rather than to commit to the impact it would have on this sector of our community. I fought it, and ultimately I lost it. But it was a demonstration of my commitment that I wanted to make sure that people understood the impact to the most vulnerable within our community. That was a hard decision to say no to something. But we made decisions in the toughest of times. And if you compare that over the last 7 years to almost any time in this county's history, you'll find that this county, this government, this administration responded well to your concerns and your needs under the most difficult circumstances imaginable. Thank you.
Folks, before I pose the first question, I know all four of these gentlemen appreciate your applause again. If you would withhold it to the end just to try to exit. We have a lot of ground to cover in limited time. First question to Mr. Andrews. Many see Montgomery County at a crossroads. Given an influx of immigrants, an increasing poverty rate, and the limited availability of additional public resources to tackle new challenges. Given this fact, do you see a need for the nonprofit sector to step up and play an enhanced role in coming years? And are there specific areas and tasks in which you think the nonprofit sector can be particularly helpful? And do you see an opportunity or imperative for increased public-private partnerships and delivery of services?
Okay, thank you. Well, I do see a critical role for the nonprofit sector to continue playing. The nonprofit sector already plays a huge role in delivering our services in this county, and we could not do without you. And we have so many of the leaders of so many of our nonprofits in this room. But one of the challenges that nonprofits face is funding. The recession took a big hit on nonprofits because, as you know, the needs increased dramatically as unemployment went up, and we still have an unemployment rate in the county that is 70% above what it was before the recession. Need has continued to increase in the county, as you know well. The farms rate in our public schools is 34% now. That means more than 50,000 of our public school students are eligible for free and reduced meals. That has increased about 1% a year for the last 20 years and perhaps longer than that. So by all these measures, we are a needier county. But our county needs to make sure that we are providing sufficient funds to meet these needs. Now, 70% of our county government's budget goes to salaries and benefits. That is where the money goes. That's what drives tax rates. Now, last year, Mr. Leggett agreed to 13.5% to 19.5% pay raises for county employees who receive step increases, which is most county employees, over this year and next year. I voted against that. I said those are excessive increases. Employees deserve a pay raise, but a more modest pay raise in the 3 to 5% range annually, not 6 3/4 to 9 3/4. So I want to ask you, how many of your employees received 6 3/4 to 9 3/4 pay raises this year? Very few, I'm sure, if any. How many are going to receive 6 3/4 to 9 3/4 pay raises next year? July 1st. Very few. So that's what crowds out a lot of the important programs that we need. We have to have a balance there. We haven't got that balance. We're back to pay raises that are too large, and I have stood up and said, get the balance right.
Thank you. The question was about the nonprofits. Is there a need? Was there a greater need? Of course there's a need for nonprofit organizations in our community. We would not be the county that we are without you all, as I said earlier. And I was very proud when I was county executive, we actually instituted a county policy that the county would be the provider of last resort in health and human services, that we would turn to the private sector, the nonprofit sector, to provide those services and help provide grants, help provide funding, because you leverage your county dollars with private sector dollars and with other things, and with volunteers, and you get a higher and I think better level of service when you do that. The heart of the question, though, really is about funding. And how are we going to be able to afford the budgets of the next 5, 10 years? How are we going to be able to afford our schools and everything else that we do when our poverty rate has increased dramatically? I think we've added 30,000 people living in poverty in this county in the last 7 years. And what's happened is that Maryland is no longer the economic engine for the state of Maryland. When I was county executive, we led the state of Maryland in job growth. We now lead the state of Maryland in job loss. We've lost 11,000 jobs here in Montgomery County since last July. Last month, Maryland gained 9,300 jobs. Montgomery County lost 450 jobs. In the last 8 years, D.C. has added 36,000 jobs. Fairfax has added 50,000 jobs. Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, Howard County, Prince George's County have all added more jobs than we have. We need to focus on economic development, on our existing businesses here, working with them, making us an innovation economy hub again, and focus on town center development and redevelopment. And I'd like to make Wheaton the next major revitalization area for Montgomery County. Thank you.
Well, of course we need the nonprofit sector and more of it. And again, thank you for what you do. But the thing that I worry about, and I've been to a lot of these forums, every group has a need for expanded needs financial. My view is we can't keep putting our hands in the pockets of the taxpayers. We got to be creative. And I'm going to say the first thing I want to do, and Lou Peck wrote a great article in a recent Bethesda magazine, and I support this, and I've been saying this from the day I announced my candidacy, and I'm going to repeat it. We are the only county in the United States, repeat, we are the only county in the United States that owns the liquor stores, the warehouses, and the distribution assets of liquor. Lou told me tonight, we used to have, I thought we still had, we used to have our own brand of liquor called County Crest, but they stopped that. That's ridiculous. One, I'm morally opposed to it, and two, in Lou's article, there's a recent report that we could collect $50 million right away on the privatization of the liquor stores, and over years, we'd make a ton of money. I want to bring a minor league baseball team or arena football to the county. There's groups that want to do that. So we want to expand our base for revenue, not taking it out of people's pockets. Get rid of the liquor stores. Let's bring in pro sports. Let's recruit business, give them tax incentives. If they need a road built in their new facility, we're going to build it. We're going to recruit business. That's where the revenues come from to help groups like you. Thank you.
I would love to get out of the liquor business. And if you can demonstrate for me a way we could get ongoing $32 million a year, much of which goes to support your programs, I'm willing to go yesterday. You've heard some numbers earlier about 7, 9, 10% salary increases. Be smarter than this. Understand what is happening here. I eliminated 10% of the entire county workforce. I eliminated COLAs for 4 years. I eliminated step increases for 3 years. I took my unions to court. I furloughed county employees. I reduced retirement. I reduced health contributions. And what he's talking about is not true. Montgomery County was the only community in this region whereby we eliminated the pay grades, just eliminated, against the law, eliminated. And so if you want to compare this to what we've done, then look at the federal government. They continued throughout the recession to provide step merit increases. Montgomery County did not. And so if you look at county employees for the last 6 years, the average wage increase, once you deduct all of those things, would be 1%. So the idea that you can go to county employees and get a huge amount of money, therefore redistribute to you, you wait on that. If you wait on that, I've got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn, and I got land to sell you in Florida, and a bayou to sell you in Louisiana. It's not going to exist.
Well, what I said was absolutely true. The pay raises this year, this fiscal year, were 6 3/4 to 9 3/4%. The pay raises for next year for county employees who receive step increases are 6 3/4 to 9 3/4%. What I proposed as an alternative was to reduce those pay raises to the 3 to 5% range. That saves $14 million a year. That's real money. $14 million can fund a lot of services. And so it is absolutely true. Now, part of the problem I see is that we're back to the pre-recession policies that got us in the recession, or that made the recession much deeper than it should have been in the first place. So if you have pay raises of this magnitude, you can't sustain them. And it's not good for employees to have contracts broken. I don't make promises I can't keep. And I'm going to negotiate wage and benefit increases that are fair to employees and affordable to taxpayers, and that we can sustain, and that leave room for other things in the budget, such as progressive social services.
Thank you. Second question to Mr. Duncan. Mr. Duncan, you have spoken openly and eloquently about your own experience with clinical depression and of the imperative for others with similar conditions to seek assistance. Based both on your personal experience and your years as a public policymaker, how would you assess the availability and adequacy of services in our county aimed at intervention, prevention, and ongoing treatment when acute physical as well as mental health issues arise? And what actions do you feel are needed in the future to better plan and coordinate the provision of physical health, mental health, and other human services needs across government, nonprofit, and other provider agencies?
Thank you for the question. Yes, as I like to say, a not so funny thing happened to me on my way to Annapolis in 2006. I was diagnosed with major depression, pulled out of the race, and got better for myself and my family, and have talked about it quite a bit because the Mental Health Association of Montgomery County told me that within a week after I announced I was pulling out of the race for governor, and because I was suffering from depression, they had 1,000 people call them looking for help. I've actually had, it's very humbling, but I've actually had 2 people come up to me and tell me that I have literally saved their life, that they were contemplating suicide until they heard about my condition and said, well, gee, if it can happen to him, you know, maybe I'm not so bad after all. This is an issue very near and dear to my heart. My family has a history of mental illness. My grandfather tried to commit suicide and then spent 32 years in a mental hospital. That's the way they treated bipolar disorder back then. They just put you away for the rest of your life. We need to do more. And what's interesting, I was just at the NAMI Maryland Walk in Baltimore on Sunday. What's interesting was I was talking to some people, and they said, you know, that the problem isn't mental illness. The problem is untreated mental illness. And we have done an awful lot in this county to help identify behavioral health problems among our youth and among our adults and among our people coming through the criminal justice system. We need to do more of that. We need to make it more available. I was very fortunate. I was a county employee when I suffered my illness. I belonged to Kaiser. I went to Kaiser and got treatment right away. Saw a psychiatrist, saw a therapist, got medication. Not everyone is as fortunate as that. And I think we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help our schools, to help others, our law enforcement agencies, to look out for these symptoms, to look out for these issues, and to provide ways to help get treatment through signing up for Obamacare. The state of Maryland has not done a good job with that. We need to take that to another level as well. But there are a lot of things that we can do, that we must do to prevent the tragedies that Jim Shalek was talking about, but also to provide relief and help to people who are suffering needlessly. Thank you.
Well, from my experience, I'm in private law practice, and I do a lot of criminal defense work. And what I see lacking is the attention to mental illness when youngsters come into juvenile court and the young teenagers and young adults go into adult court. You know, they're just ushered through the system. Most from the minority community and poor communities have public defenders who are excellent lawyers, but they're overwhelmed. They can have 150, 200 cases. So I think we need to beef up the resources for mental health evaluation and treatment in the county jail and in Noise, the juvenile detention facility, because too many of, and I've seen it in my clients, they're disturbed, they go in, they do their 3 months in jail, and they're counting the time for credit for time served, and they're released, and they haven't been helped. And then they're back again for a more serious crime. So I would like to see more concentration of mental health evaluation and treatment in the jail and the juvenile detention facility, so we can stop them from coming back and creating a bigger problem.
One of my political heroes, the late Hubert Humphrey, said that a society, a government, is judged by three things in his opinion: how we treat those in the dawn of life, the twilight of life, and in the shadows of life. Those with mental illnesses, those with disabilities, those with problems that we shun are too often in the shadows. I can't answer that question in terms of expertise. I'm elected as a county executive with a background in law, government, military, public service. But I can commit to you that we will do everything that we can do as a county to make certain that we provide the resources that are necessary, to make certain that we collaborate with the people who can best answer those questions, to make certain that we pay attention to the challenges and difficulties we face. You don't want a county executive to give advice on some of these very difficult, challenging questions that you've just posed. But you do want a county executive who's going to prioritize it. You do want a county executive who will provide the resources. And you do want a county executive who is not afraid to go before the public and talk about it in an open session and provide the resources, support, and leadership that is necessary. That's my commitment.
In some ways, the country's made a lot of progress in this area. In terms of health care coverage, a lot of progress. But at the state level, we've seen a huge reduction in the number of beds that are available for severely mentally ill people. And we have a crisis in the prison system, in the jail system, with mentally ill people. And if you talk to Art Wallenstein, who is our Director of Department of Corrections, he will give you a very sobering picture of what they are facing. Because even though our average daily population at the jail is going down, and that's good, the number of people that are severely mentally ill in numbers and as a percentage of people coming through the system is going up. And so many now require immediate treatment, and under the law, they're required to be transported to a state bed, to a state psychiatric facility or mental hospital within 12 hours. But many of them aren't taken there or can't be taken there because there aren't the beds. There are only about 150 beds in the state now. There used to be 15 years ago, 20 years ago, about 850. So the state has washed its hands of this problem. And our jail, our prison system is doing a great job of addressing this issue. The treatment there is outstanding, but that's not where people who are mentally ill should be treated. And when they go back into the community, they often, usually, don't get the services that they've gotten in the jail, and they relapse and come back. And that's not good for everyone. So we need to work with the state to address this issue.
Yeah, I'll just end with, I have a Leadership in Action agenda. It's available at dougduncan.com. It's got a lot of ideas about what we need to do for the future, like gigabit internet speeds and higher ed centers and things like that. But one of my platform items is creating a task force on the special needs population. It is growing in the county. Particularly autism is growing in the county. And we are not, I think, prepared for the growth we're going to see in that population. And I'd like to see us become a national model in dealing with special needs populations in our community and in making sure that as they transition from childhood education coverage to the age of 21 and then they just drop off the cliff, you know, what are we doing for housing, for employment, for things like that? So I want to put a task force together to help come up with recommendation ideas to move us to being a national model for treating or helping people with special needs. Thank you.
Okay. Next question is for Mr. Shalik. During this campaign, all of you, the candidates, have discussed the need to bring high-quality employers to Montgomery County to attract new residents and increase the tax base. But there is also the need to ensure that current county residents can be matched with the jobs of the future so that they're able to achieve self-sufficiency and help to build and contribute to prosperous communities. As county executive, what additional moves do you feel are necessary not only to attract good jobs to the county, but to ensure that those already living here possess the skills to compete for those well-paying skilled positions?
Certainly, recruiting business is essential to come up with the money we need. You know, we're bigger than 6 states. There's over 1 million people in this county, and Phil mentioned it. We're bigger than 6 states, and we need a lot of money as we grow and need services. Business recruitment is essential. I'm a business-friendly guy, and our county doesn't have that reputation. You got to make companies, you got to go out and recruit them, and you got to make them offers they can't refuse. Tax incentives to come into the areas around the metros, into Lower County. Give them tax incentives. The bottom line why a company will come here is to make more money. That's why they move here. I mean, we have a great community, but they'll go to a not-so-great community if they can make money. So we want to attract them, but it costs money when they move here. They got to relocate 200-300 people. They build buildings. So we got to give them tax incentives for a number of years so they can offset their incoming costs. We got to build them roads. You know, for the first 10 years I lived here, I couldn't, you know, my wife and I tried to go to the Rio complex, you know, the Rio movies and the Rio Center off 270. And for 10 years we drove by. There was no access road. We ended up in Chevy Chase, had to turn around. I mean, and they had trouble. A lot of business went out of business. I don't know why the government didn't build a road coming down 270 right into the Rio. There you go. There's your movies. There's your restaurants. They didn't do that. So I'm a business-friendly guy. You need a road. We're going to build it. You need tax incentives. We're going to give it to you. We're going to go out and bring them in. High-tech jobs. And not let them walk away to Virginia. You got to be aggressive. You're not going to wait till they apply. You got to go out and steal them, bring them in, and make them offers. And that's my last plug, which I say for my end. We have an all-Democratic government. And that government has a reputation for being against business. So consider a two-party system in this county. My running mates for the council, myself, because when there's a Republican in the mix, they're going to be more business-friendly than a Democrat. Thank you.
Our workforce is challenges two sort. One, at the higher end, I think that we are responding throughout Montgomery College, Johns Hopkins, University of Maryland, with workforce training for the jobs of the future. And we need to collaborate with incoming businesses and those that exist here now, provide the training that's needed for those jobs of the future. And we're doing that. But there's another level of employment that's here. That is the employment of people that fall between the gaps, the people who do not go to college right off, people who need technical support and transition, people in jobs that I think far too often we've taken for granted. I was surprised most recently when I had a plumbing bill to look at the cost that I paid to the plumber. And the plumber had gone through a program at one of our local technical schools. The same thing with many people in the electrical trades. There are an awful lot of jobs here that we should be preparing people for. And so if we do those on 2 stages, one for those who want to go to 4-year institutions, to get those more advanced jobs and to take on those skills, but also to be much more innovative and creative as it relates to those who fall beneath that in terms of job performance and education, who say, I want to go to a technical skill. And we've had a mindset far too long that have rejected that. We need to make certain that we infuse that sector with the resources that are needed in order to respond to the jobs that are already here.
We've got to do 3 things to improve our job climate. One, we've got to keep county costs and taxes reasonable. I talked about how excessive salaries and benefits drive taxes because 70% of the county budget is salaries and benefits. So we need to do that. Our energy tax is far too high. It's the region's highest by far. In 2010, Mr. Leggett proposed doubling it, said it should be limited to 2 years because it was going to be a significant impact on people. And I'm sure you felt the impact because the energy tax is 10% of your residential bill, and it's about 50% of the bill that businesses pay for distribution costs. I've led the effort the last 3 years. We've brought the energy tax rate down 27% from what the increase was in 2010. We need to keep doing that, and I will. Second, we need to do better in Annapolis, where we get clobbered. We're only getting 20 cents back or so on our tax dollar, and if we continue to do that poorly, our local taxes continue to have pressure to be high. We get 12.5% of the state school construction funding. We educate 17% of the students. We have teacher pension costs shifted to us, $60 million a year, additional costs. We don't control the cost. So that's another issue. We've got to unite our delegation. We've got to mobilize the public to do that. Third, we've got to retool education. We have so many students that are falling through the cracks, that aren't engaged, that need job skill and career skill training, internships, apprenticeships, partnerships, and one of the things that I will do is I will establish AmeriCorps programs so that we are the leader in service programs in this country. I used to manage the county's AmeriCorps program. We should be a leader in that.
You know, I've always believed that the best social program is a jobs program. And right now, we're leading the state of Maryland in job loss. We've got to turn that around. We've got to make Montgomery County more business-friendly by working with the existing businesses, by fixing our broken Department of Permitting Services, by revamping our Economic Development Department. We've got to become a center, once again, in the innovation economy. We should be the startup center for the Washington region and the state of Maryland. But instead of that, we're closing 2 of our 5 incubators here in the county. We're shrinking the startup space that we have in this county, the co-working space that we have in this county. We're evicting 38 biotech startups so we can put a federal cyber center up at the Shady Grove incubator. That's the wrong way to go. We should be expanding things. Steve Case has said that job growth in the future is going to be through startups. We should be the startup center here. One of the things I want to do is borrow an idea from New York City that Mayor Bloomberg did and create a competition for an applied science graduate research center to take us to the next level in higher ed in this county. The other thing we need to do is something that Chicago has done. Chicago looked at, Mayor Manuel's looked at what are the top 5 industries in Chicago? And are we training our students for jobs in those industries? And the answer was no. So they set up programs now. Insurance is one of the industries. I don't know the other 4, but insurance is one of them. They've set up programs in the high schools, the community colleges, and the higher ed institutes to train people to come into these jobs and be ready for them. We need to do something like that here in Montgomery County. Where's our hospitality incubator? We're headquarters at Choice, Marriott, Ritz-Carlton, Hilton's right across the river. We should be a leader in preparing people for jobs in the hospitality industry. We're not doing that now. Thanks.
Shallow, you have the last word.
Yeah, just 2 things. Two things we can do right away to attract business and send a better signal. One, we should do away with the bag tax. Everybody hates the bag tax, especially small business. You know, all the bookkeeping and everything. What a bad message. Come to Montgomery County business, but everybody pays 5 cents for a bag and yells at you on the way out. That's not good. So let's get rid of the bag tax. That's me. And with all the regulations and rules you got to do to navigate to open a business, I want to have one person, a male, Vince or Susan, in the county employee, and I want to introduce the CEO of a big company to Vince or Susan, and Susan is going to guide you through the maze of all the rules and regulations on signage and all that. Make it easy for business to come here, not hard. And you do that, they're going to come because they're going to make more money. Because we have the demographics, people are going to buy their products, but you got to get the monkey off their back with all these taxes and regulations. Thanks.
Next question to Mr. Leggett. We know from recent data that current efforts to meet Montgomery County's affordable housing demand aren't reaching enough school children and working families to support our community's stability and economic growth, and that many of those employed in Montgomery County can't afford to live here. In addition to increased workforce housing for the latter group, there is a need for both more rental units for low-income tenants and moderately priced units for those with somewhat higher but still limited incomes. Do you see a need to intensify efforts on all of these types of housing, or are there particular priorities within these categories that must be addressed first? And what steps would you advocate in the near and midterm future to increase the supply of affordable housing in the county?
Well, certainly I see a need for all those forms of housing, but most especially senior housing. I want to give you a comparison here. If you look at the time and the cost and what we did prior to my arrival in Montgomery County, but what we provided for affordable housing, and look at the last 7.5 years, there's an astounding increase. We are spending somewhere in the neighborhood of close to $43 million per year, $320 million in affordable housing, compared to somewhere in the neighborhood of less than 15 per year in the prior administration. That's a huge investment. And keep in mind, I made that investment in the worst economic conditions since the Great Depression. And as a result of that, we have either maintained, enhanced, or constructed 12,000 affordable housing units. That's a huge increase in this county. Now, the challenge here is this, is that despite the fact that we made such gains and increased the number, we still have a challenge. We have a challenge because this has not been adopted as a regional problem. Montgomery County is doing its part, but unless the district, Prince George's County, and especially Northern Virginia is doing its part in terms of affordable housing, then we will continue to have a struggle here. And that's change. We should not solve the regional problems of affordable housing solely in Montgomery County. We need to do this from a regional perspective.
Affordable housing has been a priority of the county for many years, but we have put significantly additional funding into the Housing Initiative Fund in recent years. When I came on the council in 1998, the Housing Initiative Fund was at $2.5 million. And in that first year, with two of my colleagues, then Councilmember Steve Silverman and Councilmember Derek Berlage, we proposed tripling the Housing Initiative Fund to $7.5 million, and the council did that. And it has now been increased over the years, over time, to in the $45 up to $50 million a couple of times. So we are doing a lot in terms of leveraging public funds with private dollars to build new affordable housing. We have to spend as much effort in protecting and preserving the affordable housing we already have, because if we have a net loss of affordable housing, it doesn't do us any good. And so one of the actions the council took, which I strongly supported recently, was when we took up the Long Branch sector plan, we had a proposal from the planning board to rezone properties along Piney Branch Road that would most likely have resulted in those affordable apartment buildings being torn down as the Purple Line is built and being replaced with expensive units, driving many, if not all, of the current residents out. I'm very glad the council did not change the zoning, because we need to make sure we don't make our problem worse. When you're in a hole, the first rule of holes is stop digging.
We live in a great community, and it's a county with a conscience. And as Phil said, affordable housing has been a priority for this county for decades. We were a national leader in finding ways to provide affordable housing through MPDUs, through TDRs, through other things that we did. And I'm proud to have carried on that tradition. When I was county executive, Mr. Leggett has carried on when he as county executive. It's part of our culture. I think that's one of the great things about us. But the challenge we face now is that with over 30,000 more people living in poverty in this county in the last 7 years, with, I'd say, over 20,000 people giving up looking for work in the county since last July, we've got more needs than ever. And it all comes back to our economic base and the job growth. Once again, we lead the state of Maryland in job loss. We are not coming out of this recession as well as our surrounding jurisdictions. And we are suffering because of it, and we're going to suffer for some time because of that until we get the job growth going again. And the job growth's got to be across a wide spectrum, and the housing growth's got to be across a wide spectrum. And affordable housing, I think we certainly need to do more around our metro stations and try to find ways, particularly for the millennial generation, find ways to get them some affordable housing so that they can stay here, live here, start up companies here, and grow jobs here.
Yeah, I think we all agree we need more affordable housing. The key is, I think it's just, whoops, thanks, Ike. The key is not to, again, put our hand in the taxpayer's pocket, because that's going to drive people away. You don't mandate affordable housing with the developers. I want to work with the developers. In other words, they want to build their 4,000 studio apartments 5,000 for a one-bedroom, let them. In other words, let's work with the developers, give them incentives to develop and build the expensive profit-making centers they want. Otherwise, they're going to go to Arlington or Howard County. So we want to keep them here and not go to Arlington or Frederick. These are booming communities around us. So how do you work with the developers? You give them tax incentives, you give them the road incentives they need, you welcome them, let them build their skyscrapers and get $6,000 a month for a two-bedroom apartment. But you make a deal with them that they got to come up with some affordable housing. In other words, you work with the developers to create affordable housing, not against developers. And I think too much of the reputation in our county is that the developers don't feel welcome. We've got to welcome them. They're building the places where we live, and we want to attract high earners to live there. So we've got to work with the developers, let them create some affordable housing, make them deals, and I think together we can accomplish what they want, which is to make a lot of money, and to accomplish what we want, more affordable housing.
Developers are welcome, and many of them are doing very, very well. Yes, I would work with developers, and many of them work with us to increase over and above the mandated requirements for affordable housing. But we need to mandate and ensure that our laws are carried out as it relates to MPDUs, and I will do that. Let's go back to an earlier statement. Yes, affordable housing has been a priority for a long time. There are an awful lot of priorities that are on paper that look good. There are priorities that have been funded. But there's a difference between funding as county executive at the first blush, put it in your budget at the outset for council members to later vote on, which I am putting $40 plus to $50 million annually into affordable housing, than the program that we had before that was less than $15 million. That's a difference of commitment, that's a difference of leadership, and that's what I've done. In the midst of the worst recession that we've had, that's what I did.
Last question to Mr. Andrews, and then we'll go to the audience questions. The county's demographics are changing as Montgomery County has become a jurisdiction with a diversity of cultures. In your view, what needs to be done to ensure that the talents and perspectives of these recent immigrants, both from elsewhere in Maryland, out of state and abroad, are brought to the table and heard when policy decisions are made? And do you feel that these changing demographics will create a need for the reordering of both county budget priorities and how county services are targeted as we move forward?
Certainly, and what an incredible county we live in. We are a nation of immigrants, and we are a county of immigrants as well, and it makes us richer. We have incredible organizations that do great work in helping people learn English, like McHale, which I've observed over many years now in the county council, and does an organization's great job in helping more people learn English in this county, which we all want people to do. I think you do it by being a welcoming community, you do it by involving people, you do it by going where people are and talking to them. I've knocked on 18,000 doors in this campaign to reach out to people across the county, from Wheaton to Poolesville, from Silver Spring to Bethesda, to Kensington, to Olney, to all communities just about in this county, because I want to hear directly from people. And as county executive, I would listen on people, weigh what people have to say. One of the challenges of serving in office is not everybody comes out to our public meetings, and you have to always think about who's not in the room, who doesn't have PACs, who doesn't have lobbyists, who doesn't have the time to be in front of the county council and bird dog the county council. So I always listen to everybody very respectively, but I always think about who is not in the room. And I don't take any campaign funds from interest groups. So I'm really attuned to what is out there, what people are thinking. And one of the things that I proposed, which at first blush may not seem tied into this issue, but I assure you it is to establish public financing of elections so we can open up our political system to more people. You know, new blood is a good thing. New blood in politics is a good thing. It'd be a good thing in the county executive office too. So public financing of elections would open up elections to a lot more people, including people who are new to the county and don't have ties to the status quo.
This is also a personal issue to me. My father came from France when the Nazis took over France. So he came here as a junior in high school. Didn't speak any English. Spent 2 years in high school here, joined the Marines, served out the end of World War II, and since he was fluent in French, they sent him to the Pacific to fight. But he was an American citizen because his father was an American citizen in France. But he lived sort of the immigrant experience. And it's something that he talked to us about quite a bit. And he worked for the federal government for his career. When he retired from that, he went and taught ESOL in the county public schools. And I'll say, other than his family, other than his wife and his 13 kids, I think the best part of his life were the years he was teaching ESOL, because he saw himself in these students who he was teaching. Students coming into high school from a different country, not speaking English, leaving a war-torn country to come here for a better, safer life. So this idea of diversity and change is something that was part of my growing up. It's been part of me for as long as I can remember. And I'm very proud of the change that we have in Montgomery County. We are a global community. We are much better positioned to be part of the global economy because of the diversity in our community. And it is a strong asset for us, and we need to make sure that we continue to encourage not just respect and tolerance, but inclusion and reaching out to all segments of our community to make them feel part of this great Montgomery County and to achieve the American dream as my father did when he came here and as his students are doing when they came here. Thank you.
Well, yes, we are more diverse, but I grew up on the Lower East Side of New York, and I worked in the Bronx for 12 years, so that was diversity. To me, the things we have to do as government is to have more people that look like the minority community in positions of authority. We need more minority police officers, firefighters, teachers. Leading the Republican ticket this year, I insisted that we run a slate of diverse people. And we have a lot of Asian candidates on the ballot this year, African American candidate, women. So I insisted on that if I was going to lead this ticket, and we got it. Because if you don't have diversity in government, the diverse community is not going to relate. There's going to be a friction. There's not going to be a dialogue. And my priority would be to make the police force, which has the daily interaction with people, much more diverse and friendly. And I pledge to do that.
Well, thanks, Jim, for that plug that government should look more like minority. When I first came aboard, one of the first things that I did was to establish his Office of Community Partnership, to make certain that Montgomery County was one of the most welcome communities in all of America. And we are moving in that direction. We have the world of Montgomery. You look around, we do so many things trying to bring this community together. But I didn't start as county executive. I didn't start when I was a council member. I started many years ago as the chair of the county's Human Rights Commission right here in Montgomery County 37 years ago. 37 years ago, not as an elected official, but working to bring our community together. And if you look around this community today, I think you see the fruits of that legacy of accomplishments over that long period of time, working with a broad segment of this community. We have traveled, for example, to Asia, to North Korea, South Korea, to Vietnam, El Salvador, to China. We're going back again to India because this is our community. But let me make sure you understand this. This is not just about being a minority in a minority jurisdiction. This is about all of us coming together. I was elected by the broad base of people throughout this county, most of whom are not minority, because the credit goes to our broad community because of their acceptance, their respect for the things that we are doing in this community.
I want to mention a proposal I've made that I think is really important to expand access to knowledge and education in Montgomery County. One of the very best things about our county is our county's library system. But you know what? It's closed most of the time. And while our county liquor stores are all open on Sunday afternoons, most of our county libraries are closed on Sundays. And so when you think of opportunity, is there any institution in Montgomery County that provides more opportunity to people, especially people who are poor and new to the country, new to the county, than our libraries? They are centers for communities. They are centers for job research. They are centers for literacy. They are centers for knowledge. And it doesn't cost much to open all of our county libraries on Sundays. That's one of the first things that I would do as county executive, as well as extending evening hours so people that are working long hours can get into our libraries and they're open a lot more of the time.
Thank you, gentlemen, and it's now time for the audience to take over. I would again remind everybody of the 3 rules. If you want to ask a question, please come up and line up here. Keep your question as succinct as possible and indicate whether the question is addressed to all the candidates or particular candidates. We have about 20 minutes for audience questions.
Good evening. My name is Ken Wiener. I'm president of FutureLink. We work with disadvantaged youth with post-secondary education and career development. My concern is you all talked about job growth, but the Office of Legislative Oversight just came out with a lengthy report which suggests that almost all the job growth in the county will be focused on low-skill, low-wage jobs or high-skill, high-wage jobs. Very few jobs in middle-skill, middle-wage. And for the kids that we work with, that's a critical area. And so the only job growth they talked about was in a registered nurse in that area. So I'm curious what you could do to not just increase job growth, but to balance out so that we have more job growth in this middle skill, middle wage area.
Is this addressed to all the candidates?
Yes.
Okay. You each have a minute and a half to respond. Mr. Andrews, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, that's a great question, and I appreciate the good work that's done by FutureLink, and I've had a chance to see the program in action. There is a huge gap in our county in this area. There's so many young adults, students and young adults who are not getting the skills and getting the opportunities they need to be able to support themselves in a good paying job that leads to a career. And over the last 20 or 30 years, vocational education was greatly reduced in our public schools, and I think that was a mistake. And I think we need to bring it back and modernize it for the 21st century so that we have more opportunities for students to learn things like computer coding and apprenticeships in traditional jobs and trades as well. Montgomery College is an incredible institution, and we support it strongly, and they play an important role in this. But so many of our high school students are falling through the cracks in this regard. And I have spoken with members of our Board of Education. I think there is interest in this. I think this is an opportunity where we need not necessarily spend more money, we need to spend money differently in our school system to provide more of these opportunities for students in the middle and high schools so that they get these skills. AmeriCorps programs can help with this, Job Corps programs. But you're right, we've got to reach these students so they get the training and skills they need to be able to support themselves in good paying jobs.
Mayor Emanuel's program is working very, very well in Chicago. I mentioned it earlier. And Montgomery College does a great job here. I think, if we're training students for jobs, you want them to be the jobs that are available in our county. So by bringing that program to this county and saying, okay, what are the 5 biggest employment areas in the county, and there's all kinds of, from the top scientists down to a lab worker, down to someone cleaning a room. There's all kinds of opportunities available there. So if we can sort of redirect our efforts to make sure that we are providing a steady workforce for the companies that are here, I think that's going to pay great dividends for us and not cost a lot of money at all, but just make sure that we're training for the jobs that are here in Montgomery County that need to be filled.
Yeah, that is an excellent question. And in the 25 years I've been here, I've never known why we don't have a 4-year university in this county, a world-class 4-year university to attract the best and brightest from all over the world, with a bedroom to Washington, D.C. What a great place to go to college. And the best and brightest, some stay here, but the best and brightest, when my kids were looking for colleges, there wasn't that kind of college in this county. I think we should look at, the cost is a big factor, a 4-year university in the county to educate and have different programs, and then they can stay here. And second, my priority in terms of business recruitment would be the high-end, big Fortune 500 stuff. Because you bring in a company with 1,000 high earners, the secondary employment is going to grow from their presence. You know, we're going to need more restaurants, more businesses, more Kinkos, more service industry. So you bring in the high earners, the big Fortune 500 company, and they are going to need the backup jobs to support them. So those are my 2 issues that come to mind.
You don't find the training and the jobs availability in isolation. For example, if you say to a person at the level that we were talking about, that we want to provide the training for you for a job, the first thing that needs to be done is to ensure that that person could get to the training. Because normally they already have a job that they're working somewhere else. Secondly, there are challenges of transportation. Thirdly, there are challenges in many cases with child care and many other things. So you need to have a holistic approach to how you prepare people to be trained to get the skills that they need in order to get the jobs at the level that you've just described. Simply saying that we want you to be trained without that supportive network is not going to be very helpful in the long term. And this is what the nonprofit sector is doing with the program that they are looking at now, trying to model that to say, how can we provide a holistic, comprehensive approach to ensure that we get the training, the person gets the job, and we provide all the supported network of services that they need.
Thank you.
I want to thank all the candidates for being here tonight. My name is Diego Uriburu, and I'm the Executive Director for Identity. We the nonprofit sector, are a community that really care, and we do almost anything in order to provide services to the county residents that really need it. Last year, some of us went to the county council to speak with the county council members to advocate for a cost of living increase. And we were shocked, those who were there, were shocked when this individual told us that he felt very comfortable abusing the care that we had for the community, that we would operate at a loss. We see ourselves, and we're very committed because we have almost 200 people here tonight, we're very committed to the populations that the county cannot serve, county government cannot serve. We are cheaper, but we cannot cease to exist. We need infrastructure to provide services. Now, the question for you is, are we a cheap date? Or are you willing to see us as a partner, as a key pillar of Montgomery County's infrastructure, say, for all, yes.
Mr. Duncan, why don't you start this time?
Yeah, you certainly are a key pillar to the makeup of this county and to who we are as a community. And as I mentioned before, when I was county executive, we established the policy of the county government, Health and Human Services, would be the provider of last resort, that we look to the nonprofits. So I've always viewed you as partners in what we do. You're an important piece of what we do. And frankly, it's a great use of county taxpayer dollars because of the volunteers, because of the extra donations that you get, because of the above and beyond work that you do. So you are critical partners for us and need to be treated that way. And we need to factor in cost of living increases and other things as a way to help you retain your employees and keep people doing what they do best.
Yes, I certainly agree with everything that's been said. And again, I said earlier, I'm learning tonight. When I saw the list of everybody that was attending, I saw that there's so many different groups in the nonprofit community. And I'm just wondering, a question back, is there ever any talk or dialogue between different agencies to consolidate, to reduce costs and personnel, and to avoid duplication of service? I don't know the answer. But
The answer is?
Oh, there is? Okay. Because there's so many, it looked like to me there was so many different groups doing similar things that I just wonder if that was ever on the table. But I agree, and I want to work with the private sector to increase their contribution. See, I'm going to make the private sector deals they can't refuse. They're going to make a lot of money under my administration, but they're going to have to pay back. I want to get the money you need from the private sector. They get $6,000 a month for a studio apartment in some of these buildings, so they can come up with some dough, and that's what I want to do.
you cannot exist very long and be effective as simply as a cheap date. You probably need to be a more effective companion so that when you go on that date, both parties are picking up the tab. That includes the contributions that you get from the efforts that you make, but also a responsive contribution from the county government to help you do your job. And I think that's the relationship that we should have. That values your expertise, your creativity, and does not in any way degrade the work that you are doing. And I think this is what we should continue to do. You should make certain that you have the resources that are needed so that you can be effective in the things that you're doing.
It's incredibly important to have a respectful relationship with our community partners, and I hope you feel that I always am that way with you and with everyone else in this room, because I think that's where you start. I'm very familiar with the work that Identity does, and Identity, for those of you who may not know, does incredible work in our jail in Clarksburg, working with some of the prisoners there to help them get the skills and get reentry and come out into the community and be successful, which is in all of our interests. Identity does a lot more than that. But I think it is very important for the county to recognize that the work that is done by our nonprofits is work that if we had to do would be almost impossible for us to do. And in that way, we need to make sure that we are reasonable in terms of what we provide in funding. And each year, almost every single year, maybe every single year that I've been on the county council has added to what the executive has proposed for funding for nonprofits to help nonprofits keep up with inflation. Because, as you know, you generally have fallen behind. So I believe the County Council has a very good track record in doing this, in working with the nonprofits, and in working to provide more funding than has been recommended over many years. And I thank you for your work.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Jessica Kong, and I'm here representing Pure Wellness and Recovery Services, Inc. We're based in Silver Spring. I'm a grant researcher and a business development associate. You're going to have to excuse me. I just came back from California, managing a crisis over there as a peer recovery support specialist, so I can barely put two sentences together, so I had to write down. Okay, so basically a peer recovery support specialist, in a nutshell, we are peers with lived experience, either through mental conditions or alcohol abuse. And it's expertise that we can provide that no professional can really replace or replicate. The way I see it, we are the missing link. We are the prevention specialist before the crisis stage. So with that being said, those of us who work in mental and behavioral health, you know, funding. We are forced to do more with less. So my question is there money set aside for peer services in community-based organizations or hospitals, or perhaps even to open up a center?
Mr. Leggett, you want to start with that?
Is there money currently set aside for it? Was that the question? Is there money currently set aside for it?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
I don't think so. I don't think there's money currently set aside for all of the things that you've just described. I think some of those things are covered by other nonprofits that we currently support. But whether or not all of those things, as you listed there, are currently within the budget, I'm not sure. I have to go back and look at it. But there are a few of those that I'm sure that we do, in fact, cover based on what you've just listed.
Mental health is one of the more complex challenges that we deal with, and it's obviously critically important. I think one of the first steps that we need to do is to do a needs assessment of what our community needs are in this area, because we want to make good decisions and we need good information to do so. And it starts with a needs assessment. It also starts with knowing what we are currently doing to meet those needs, and then figuring out how we can best fill the gap and what kind of transition we can do to meet those needs. But not just alone, we also need to involve others. We need to involve the state, because the state needs to be an important part of this as well in providing the type of beds that have been so reduced in recent years for severely mentally ill people.
Yeah, remember, mental illness is not the problem. Untreated mental illness is the problem. Absolutely. And peer support provides an incredibly valuable resource to help people struggling with behavioral health and mental health issues. I've been struck by the number of people who have approached me because I talk about it so much, seeking help from me, and I immediately say, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counselor, here's my experience, here's what what I would recommend you do. And many times it turns out that way, that they do seek help. So there's something about talking to someone who has lived the experience that you're going through that's incredibly important, and I think we certainly need to do much more of that and find ways to have that built in. I don't know under the new state behavioral health funding guidelines whether peer support is part of that or not, or whether they're phasing that out. If they are, that's a big mistake, and we need to correct that.
You know, as I said in my opening statement, my priority is public safety, and I look at the mental health issues as part of that priority. And, you know, we have a $5 billion, that's with a B, we have a $5 billion budget. So what we got to do, I'm the only outsider up here that hasn't been in the government. What we got to do is look at that $5 billion pie and cut out a lot of the waste and excess. You know, how many cars does the county have? How many conventions do they go to? Start with the, you know, the fringe, and then look at departments and all the boards and commissions and things we have. And we may have to cut some of these things out. You got to cut non-essential services. I know a lot of people serve as volunteers, but the cost of all these boards and commissions has to rack up big numbers with secretarial and rental, electricity. So you got to look at the whole budget, cut out the waste and the excess, and give it to the priorities: public safety, mental health, and education. That's what you got to do. You got to make the tough choices and prioritize.
Thank you.
Two more questions. We'll have to cut it off there. So.
My name is Casey Barker, and I work with Interfaith Works, which is a nonprofit here in Montgomery County, and I'm the program director for two housing programs: Carroll House, which houses 32 transitional men, and Becky's House, which is a supportive permanent housing program for elderly women. I'm originally from rural Kansas. My first apartment was $250, including utilities. So I think that one of the leading causes of homelessness here in Montgomery County is the high cost of living. I noticed that there was a lot of talk about incentives to work with developers and give tax incentives to big businesses. And I just want to know exactly the panel's views on working with nonprofits, and how exactly would bringing in large developers who charge $6,000 for a studio or a two-bedroom apartment going to help one of my men at Carroll House, who is stretched thin looking for a $450 room to rent. And I would also like to know that, you know, I'm an educated professional who has stable, gainful employment, and it would be difficult, it would be impossible for me to afford a $6,000 apartment. So not only would bringing in large developers like that hurt your county employees, your employees who work for nonprofits, but it's certainly not going to help the homeless population that we work with who's struggling to find a $450 room to rent.
Mr. Shalek, you want to start?
No, what I mean is, you know, you bring in the developers and the big business, and that's where you get your revenues to spend on projects like yours. And in terms of what you do as a politician, I would never tell a group like yours how to spend the money or what to do. I wouldn't know. My goal would be to give you the money you need. And unfortunately, in today's world, the money is in development and big business, and they're going to bring in the revenue, they're going to spend the money, they're going to increase the tax base. What you need is money. You don't need me to tell you what to do. And my view of how you get money is not from the taxpayers, because they're spending enough, it's too expensive, but you get the businesses to cough up donations, they increase the revenue base, and that's how you get your money. It's all about getting the money, not about, you know, anything moral or what I'm trying to do. I just want to get the county the money it needs, and I want to get it from the private sector, not the taxpayer.
Well, the private sector doesn't meet all needs. That's why we have a public sector. The bases are different. The private sector has a profit motive. The public sector does not. It still needs to be efficient, but it doesn't exist to make money. It exists to serve people and help people do things they can't do by themselves and to have opportunity to be the best they can be. I don't agree that we should be looking to give lots of tax breaks. I think our goal should be to have a generally hospitable business climate so that everybody can thrive. I don't accept any campaign funds from developers or any special interest group. I'm the only person running for county executive who doesn't. And I hope that provides some reassurance to people that all of my decisions are based on what I think is in the long-term public interest. not on what someone might be contributing or someone who I can hit up for a contribution. So the county has stepped in and provided funding to help house people so they have permanent housing, people who are homeless. Transitional housing is a huge need in the county, whether it's for people with special needs, whether it's for people who are homeless, and the nonprofit sector is a big partner there, but it needs obviously help from the public sector to achieve that important goal, to stabilize people.
Yeah, this is where the public-private partnership has to come in. You're not going to have the private sector build $450 a month apartments when they can build 6,000. So I think that's where we've got to come in through mandating certain numbers of affordable housing units to be built, as we have done in this county for a long time. I think it's where we can form partnerships with the federal government, the state government, and the county government to, again, provide assistance to help keep rates down for workforce housing and things like that. We've done that very successfully. When I was executive, we averaged building or retaining 3,000 affordable housing units a year for 12 years. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of work, and it takes a firm hand to say, you're not going to get this unless you give this as well as part of the contribution to the community for the greater good.
Mr. Leggett.
Well, one of the things we need to do is to continue to build more housing, period. And when you do so, we are ensuring that we get some of the more affordable housing as well. But let's make no mistake about the county's commitment here. I talked about the huge influx of revenues that we've provided over the last few years. Let me just give you one decision I made just recently. We made a decision in Silver Spring, on top of the fire station, at least a progress place, to build more transitional or permanent housing for people who are chronically homeless. 22, 23 units. It cost the county $143,000 per unit. There are very few communities anywhere in this country that would have done that. That was my recommendation. There are very few communities anywhere in this country, and certainly in this region, would have taken such a bold step. That is a commitment and reflection of this entire county. Now, I say that as county executive now, but that kind of commitment has gone back from virtually every county executive that existed, that they are very supportive of affordable housing. I just think that we have done more, and that's just simply an example of what we've done.
Final question.
Good evening, and thank you for your time this evening. I'm Debbie Liverpool, and I'm from Family Services Incorporated. I'm the Director of Philanthropy there. Now, my question is more about the visionary piece. Yes, there are lots of things that can happen with the developers and lots of things that can happen with the corporations. We're finding fewer and fewer hometown corporations anymore in hometown to Montgomery County. We're finding a lot of money coming from overseas these days, millions of dollars of donors coming from outside of this very wealthy county. And looking at that and combining that visionary, as a visionary, each one of you are, how can we together, again, with government, these corporations and the nonprofits, in a very good way, like we have done at AFI. I think there is a public partnership there, which you all gave as a great example, but we need to expand that to our international world, as we are now an international county.
Mr. Andrews, you want to start?
Well, I think that playing a catalytic role is something that the government can do to assist in that. You know, I'm thinking about the nonprofit village that helps that, incubators in effect, or centers that nonprofits can share resources, can help to build that community. We are certainly one of the national centers for nonprofits, and many people come to Montgomery County or to the region to work in this field, and it is a strong field, it's a great field, it's a service field, and I come out of serving as the county's AmeriCorps director, which worked to bring people into public service, and our members worked with many nonprofits on public safety issues. I Ours was one of the first first public safety-based AmeriCorps programs in the country, working with some of our nonprofits to deliver services to victims of crime. So I think that we need to brainstorm. You need to get people in the room together and brainstorm about what are the needs that people see and how can you best meet them and leverage public resources with private resources and volunteers and talent. You know, we do have an incredible knowledge bank in this county that we need to bring together. So I think if you bring the trifecta of government, the nonprofit sector, and people who are able to volunteer their time, you can really take this county to another level in terms of the services that we can provide and the needs we can meet.
If I remember correctly, there are now 3 Fortune 500 companies headquartered in the state of Maryland, and they're all in Montgomery County. We used to have a lot more, and most of them were in the city of Baltimore. And as they were bought out and bought up, they lost that local ownership, and Baltimore has really felt it. They felt the lack of corporate investment and sponsorship in the city of Baltimore. And it's very, very important to have people invested here. Discovery Communications is here. The head of it used to be John Hendricks, who lived in Bethesda, lives in Bethesda. The head of it now is a guy who still lives in New York. He's never moved down here. I mean, that's a worry. So that's why I talk so much about the innovation economy. That's why I talk so much about growing businesses here, starting businesses here, not shutting down our business incubators, not telling the world that Montgomery County no longer welcomes biotech startups, but telling the world that we want startups of any and every kind here as a way to come. And we've had some great examples. GeneDx is a company started with 2 people at the biotech incubator that the Leggett administration is now closing. They now have over 300 employees in Gaithersburg. Wedding Wire started with 4 guys in a townhouse in Montgomery County. They now have over 300 employees in Friendship Heights. So they start here, they grow here, they stay here, and then they invest in the community here. And we've got to focus on that and make that a major effort for our economic development efforts.
Yeah, the fact that we have 3 of those companies is not enough. You know, we're the bedroom community of Washington, D.C. This is the nation's capital. We need more Fortune 500 companies. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the bottom line is profit. And the corporate tax in Maryland is too high. You got a bag tax in Montgomery County. You got too many regulations. There's no question that we have a reputation of not being business friendly. And Virginia has clocked us with stealing companies that we tried to get, and they're going to Virginia. You know, you drive on the Dulles Road and you see all these cranes and construction. Virginia is knocking our clocks because they have lower tax rates, less regulations. Business will move here if they can make a bigger profit. It sounds callous, but that's the real world. And with them here, in a more friendly business environment, there'll be more revenue for the organizations that are here tonight. It sounds crass, but you got to be in the real world. And Virginia is out recruiting us, out taxing us. They're doing everything right to attract business, which we haven't done.
Mr. Leggett, the final word.
Yeah. I'm not sure that a company making a decision about the bag tax, whether or not they're going to locate it in Montgomery County at 5 cents a bag. There are problems that are generally associated primarily at the state level that we do need to, in fact, address. But I think when you look at the county itself, we're not kicking people out. We've increased the amount of money that's provided for biotechnology. We are taking advantage of the new technology in cybersecurity and maintaining many of the companies that were referred to earlier. Some of them, we're just simply asking them to move across the street or to move to another location in Montgomery County, provided even better facilities. Everyone who's looked at that question has come back and agreed with the county. But the real challenge here goes beyond just the corporation. I want to start with the people, many of the wealthy people who are here in Montgomery County that continue to have a tradition, whether or not it's in the arts or the nonprofit sector, of giving in other communities. Because traditionally, the efforts were made to do something in the District of Columbia, even though they live in Montgomery County. And that tradition has continued. And what I want to do is to make certain that the people who live here give here. and to make certain that they understand that we have needs in Montgomery County for which we can obtain their support and do what is best for overall community. That's a more worthy goal and a more achievable goal than what I see is happening in the county. Thank you.
Thank you.
Time for closing statements. Mr. Leggett, you're first.
We talked a great deal about taxes, about efforts to make changes. I simply suggest to you to look at the numbers. I suggest to you also to look at the accomplishments and the efforts that we've made in the great recession over the last few years. And you'll see remarkable efforts on behalf of my administration. Huge investments in all of the areas that we've talked about. Because one of the tenets for me was to make certain that we provide that safety net. I say so not because I am your county executive, but I believe in it. Many of the challenges that you're fighting today, I and my family experienced those things many years ago. Many even know the story that I'm one of 13 kids. Grew up in abject poverty in Louisiana in a 3-room house. And so I know what it's like to get the support and the help of others. I know what it's like to be on welfare. I know what it's like to see the challenges and difficulties that are not met and the impact it would have on a community. I don't say that as county executive. I say that because I'm doing what I believe is right. It is right for a community, and if we're going to be a comprehensive community, if we're going to live up to the values, especially values of a democratic community, then we need to respond to that. I do so because it is right. I don't do so because it simply makes sense for someone else. I'm going to do so because I believe that there is a moral obligation to respond to the challenges we face, because I've seen that it works, and I've seen that it has improved lives, and I'm one of the beneficiaries of it. Thank you.
Mr. Shalek, a minute, 90 seconds.
Thanks. Again, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it, and thank you for all you do. You know, there's not a Republican or Democratic way to keep our children safe. I have the law enforcement background to make that my #1 priority, protecting our children, our teachers, and our staff at our schools. We're not going to have a CNN helicopter over any of our schools. Every day, my goal will be to keep our children and our schools safe. We got to get the kids out of trailers. We got 10,000 kids in trailers. There's not a Republican or Democratic way to do that. You get them out of trailers. You get out of the liquor industry. You think big vision, bringing in minor league baseball, revenue, business. So please consider, I'm the Republican candidate, and there's 125,000 of us. And we don't have a voice in this state or county. And one-party rule ain't healthy. So I appreciate you considering my candidacy, my ideas, my running mates, which is a diverse slate of candidates. I really appreciate that. And all the problems we have, you can't blame the Republicans in this county. And let me give you an example, and I'm not casting aspersion, but you look at the Silver Spring Transit Center. Tens of millions of dollars overspent, years overdue. This is money from your pocket. What is it, $130, $140 million now? Years overdue. The buses can't be supported by the concrete slates. Who are you going to blame? You got to blame the Democrats. They've been in control forever. I've called for a federal grand jury investigation to get answers why we've gotten ripped off and you can't ride on the bus. Two-party rule, two parties is healthy. There's discourse, there's dialogue. Give the Republican Party a chance on our ideas, not on the opinions you have of some of our leaders that you see on TV every night. Our local party has ideas, we're diverse, we care. Please consider us, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for your questions and your attention. It's been great to be here with Phil, Jim, and Ike. Please tell your friends and neighbors that the election is 3 weeks from today on June 24th. There's a lot of people who still don't know that we've got a primary coming up in 3 weeks. So please tell everybody that. And what's great is you got 4 people running and working as hard as they can to be the next county executive for this county. We got clear choices here in front of you. And the Washington Post editorial board has correctly identified Mr. Leggett as a candidate of the status quo. And the status quo is overcrowded schools, it's a widening achievement gap, it's leading the state in job loss, it's growing poverty, and it's a Silver Spring Transit Center, which is 4 years late, $30 million over budget, and it's going to be a lot more money to get it fixed and open safely. I'm running for county executive because the status quo is not good enough for us. I spent 19 years in the private sector, 13 of which was with AT&T. the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, at AT&T, the saying was, if it ain't broke, you haven't looked. You can always improve upon what you do. And I think that's what's been missing from the county government over these last 8 years. There's no sense of urgency. There's no sense of, let's keep trying to improve things. It's let's accept this failure of the Silver Spring Transit Center and just muddle along instead of firing the person responsible for it. So as your next county executive, I'm going to bring the energy, the fresh ideas, and the leadership necessary to get this county working again. I urge you to vote for Doug Duncan for county executive on June 24th. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming out. Thanks to Manna for hosting. Thanks to the Nonprofit Roundtable for organizing. Thanks for all the work you do. Thanks to candidates Cheryl Kagan running for the State Senate and Kristen Tribble running for the school board for taking the time to be here as well. And I'm sorry if I missed other candidates in the room. There might be. Meet them, greet them. This is democracy in action. You have an important choice to make, and in 3 weeks exactly, the election, the primary election, will be over. We have had 15 of these forums so far. We got about 5 or 6 more, and I thank you for taking the time to come out to this one. You have a choice to make. All of us have experience who are running in the Democratic primary for county executive. We have long records. You have the luxury of seeing what we have done. You don't have to guess what we will do. I think you have to ask, is that record one you want to see repeated? Do you want to break new ground? Do you want to see new energy? Do you want someone who is independent of groups that fund campaigns traditionally in Montgomery County, who can make the tough decisions that strike the right balance for the public interest? I offer both experience and the independence to make the tough decisions that we need to take our county forward, to be more competitive, to get our competitive edge back in Annapolis, to get our competitive edge back in the region, and to continue to be the progressive county that all of us are so proud to have as our home. I ask for your vote. My name is Phil Andrews, and I ask for your vote in the Democratic primary on June 24th. Thank you for coming out.
Now it's time to applaud.